And my name is Maura Fitzpatrick, and I'm going to be the facilitator for this portion of the meeting. And before we begin, I just wanted to point out that we have American Sign Language signers here if they need. We'll do the American Sign Language first.
If anybody needs a sign language interpreter, we'll be sitting over to the left. Please find us and we're happy to provide interpretation.
And we also have Spanish interpreters as well.
Si alguien necesita un intérprete de español, estamos también allí sentados a la orden para servirles. I just said in Spanish that there's a Spanish interpreter. Two of us sitting there in case you need our help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And our format this evening, as most of you took advantage of, we have our open house outside, and those of us with name tags are part of the project team. And our open house is an opportunity for you to have conversations with the team members so that they can perhaps answer your questions or have some discussion. What we're doing here in this session is we want to hear from you. So this is where we're taking public statements. We will not be responding to the statements made in this area. We have a stenographer here, Joe, who's going to be helpful if people want to speak in front of the group. We also have a private stenographer that some of you have already taken advantage of, and that's in case you just want to make a quick statement or a longer statement, but you prefer to not do it in front of an audience. If you do wish to make a statement in this room, you need to fill out a speaker request card that is at the registration area. But that's not the only way that you can comment on this important project. We have comment forms that you can leave with us this evening. You can also leave written comments with us this evening. And on the bottom of the comment form is information about how you can email us, mail us, any way you'd like. All the information's there, and we are taking comments through September 18th. We are having a simultaneous meeting this evening in Tenafly. And that is exactly the same information as you're going to be hearing shortly. So I will have a few more instructions after the presentation. The presentation will be about 10 minutes long. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ralph from the Port Authority.
Thank you, Maura. Well, good evening, everyone. For those of you that just joined us, this is my name is Ralph DiPuzzo. I'm with the Port Authority, New York and New Jersey, and on behalf of the Port Authority, I'd like to welcome you to the first public scoping meeting for the bus terminal replacement project. Before we get started, we'd like to thank the Weston staff for hosting us tonight. And we'll begin with a brief overview presentation, and then we'll open it up to comments. So we're conducting preliminary level scoping meetings tonight, as Maura said, both in New York City and in Tenafly, simultaneously, same information. We will hold meetings again on September 5th, the details of which, the locations, we will advertise shortly. The preliminary planning level scoping meetings and the scoping process by the Port Authority represents an early step in the environmental review process. The planning level scoping is the public's first formal opportunity to comment on the proposed project, its purpose and need, the screening of alternatives, and the approach to assessing project impacts. The process may be used as part of the overall federal process, or NEPA process, which stands for the National Environmental Policy Act. Developing a preferred alternative includes looking at purpose and need, goals and objectives, evaluation criteria, and extensive public and agency input and coordination. The Federal Transit Administration is anticipated to be the federal NEPA lead agency. As part of the formal FTA process, there will be an additional public comment period. So we are here to listen to you tonight and hear your comments on the planning level scoping document. Your feedback is important to us. We have both hard copies, printed copies, and electronic flash drive copies of the scoping document outside. If to the left of the sign-in table, you can pick up a hard copy, and if you'd like a flash drive, you can just ask someone at the sign-in table and they'll give you a copy. In future meetings, there'll be an opportunity to review details of the proposed project's design as it further develops. We will be happy to discuss the project with you at the display boards outside. So since its opening in 1950, the Port Authority Bus Terminal has been expanded twice. First in 1963 and again in 1981, where 50% more gate capacity was added with the addition of the north wing. At its core, we must define the what and the why of the project as a first step. What is the purpose and why is it needed? This forms the project purpose and need, which is threefold in this case. First, existing bus and passenger travel demand crossing the Hudson is forecasted to increase dramatically, and this growth must be accommodated. Second, we need to address functional and physical obsolescence of the aging facility itself. And third, we will address the need for bus storage and staging and cover this in more detail later in the slides. So to address the purpose and need, goals and objectives must be established for a project. The 6 goals for this project are shown here. Simply, they are as follows: to improve Trans-Hudson bus operations, to improve the passenger experience in the terminal, to provide seamless passenger accessibility and connectivity, to strive to achieve consistency with local and regional land use plans and initiatives, to develop a project that optimizes life cycle costs, and finally, to reduce the impacts of bus services on the built and natural environment. The proposed project is guided by objectives that support the goals and address the purpose and need. Those objectives important to the commuting public are as follows. First, to maintain or improve connections to the subways to get you where you're going. To provide a world-class, state-of-the-art terminal design. To maintain or improve pedestrian accessibility to each traveler's origins and destinations. And to provide direct bus linkages from the terminal to and from the Lincoln Tunnel. For more information on the remaining objectives, please refer to the scoping document for more information. As we previously mentioned, bus storage and staging is an important aspect of the existing and future bus operations. The proposed project would provide for storage and staging within the new terminal to the extent practicable, or at a combination of on-site and off-site surface lot locations. The project would seek to minimize impacts on city streets from bus services operating within the replacement terminal and assure that the use of city streets by bus terminal buses would not increase. Independent of this, the Port Authority has commenced a separate effort looking at storage and staging capacity in response to community concerns to the bus impacts on local city streets. This separate effort could result in a bus storage and staging facility of independent utility, and that could proceed with or without the replacement project as an alternate means of addressing and potentially increasing bus storage and staging. One location being considered for this independent facility is at Galvin Plaza between 10th and 11th Avenues. Another independent initiative is related to the curbside intercity bus service. Curbside intercity buses are those intercity buses that currently operate on local New York City streets with curbside locations at pickup and drop-off locations for the passengers. Based on the vastly different nature of these private curbside intercity bus carriers, the Port Authority is not including curbside intercity buses as part of the proposed project. The curbside intercity market has developed independent of the existing terminal for a variety of reasons, as explained in the scoping document. However, the Port Authority has commenced a separate study of these issues and is assessing potential solutions, including potential sources of funding for an independent project. Now I'd like to introduce Graham Trelstead on our environmental team, who will briefly explain the alternatives analysis process.
Thank you, Ralph, and good evening to you all. From previous Port Authority planning studies, the International Design and Deliverability Competition, and a Regional Plan Association study, a long list of alternatives comprising 13 alternatives was developed. 7 of those alternatives were from prior Port Authority planning efforts. 5 were the finalists from the Design and Deliverability Competition, and 1 was from the Regional Plan Association study. This figure just shows the location of those. This is the same board that is outside in the board area, showing the location of the alternatives in Manhattan, a cluster around 8th Avenue, a small set around 9th Avenue, and then a couple around the Javits Center on 11th Avenue. And then do note that there is one alternative that was looked at in New Jersey. These 13 alternatives were then reduced to 3 alternatives that best meet the project's purpose and need. 2 fatal flaw screens were used to reduce the 13 alternatives to 3 alternatives. The first fatal flaw were projects that could not meet a minimum threshold of providing capacity for the forecasted peak hour arriving and departing buses. And the second fatal flaw were projects that would require substantial acquisition of private property. You could see the 13 alternatives in the first fatal flaw, from which 4 were removed because they couldn't meet the purpose and need, the demand. And in the fatal flaw screening number 2, of the 9 that were presented there, 6 could not meet that fatal flaw because they would require private property taking. That leaves us with the 3 remaining alternatives. They cleared the screening process: a build-in-place alternative at 8th Avenue, the Perkins-Eastman Design and Deliverability Competition finalist at the Javits Center, and the Regional Plan Association concept of splitting operations between a rehabilitated bus terminal at 8th Avenue and the Javits Center, where there will be intercity operations. 3 alternatives that we're considering currently are shown on this location map. The circle on the right is the current bus terminal location at 8th Avenue. The circle on the left is the Javits Center at 11th Avenue. And you can see the green dot, the build-in-place option at the 8th Avenue location, and the purple dot being the Regional Plan Association with split operations between a rehabilitated terminal at 8th Avenue and the Javits Center, and then the yellow or orange colored dot at the Javits Center being the Perkins-Eastman Design and Deliverability, which would have all operations at the Javits Center. It's also important to note that the federal environmental process that Ralph referred to, the NEPA process, requires us to include what's called a no-action scenario, which is required. That's basically a condition wherein the proposed bus terminal replacement is not built, but the forecasted demand is still arriving in Manhattan. So we'll have to take a look at that as well.